A little girl runs to a billionaire's mansion crying, "He's coming! He's coming to take me away!" Panic fills the air as she clutches his sleeve, desperate for protection. But when the billionaire hears the reason, his world is turned upside down. He's not just her savior, he's her father. A father who never knew she existed. The woman who kept this secret from him, the one he thought he'd lost forever, now stands before him, filled with guilt and fear. The truth is out, but it comes with a terrifying catch. Her abusive ex is threatening to take their daughter, and he's not backing down. With the stakes higher than ever, will he protect the family he never knew he had? Or will the past, full of lies and broken hearts, destroy everything? Can love and forgiveness truly heal years of pain? Or will the truth tear them apart? What will it take to save their future? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Jameson Hayes' sprawling estate as he stood at his office window, his reflection ghosting against the glass. The view before him was worth millions. Carefully manicured gardens, a stone fountain that sparkled in the fading light, and beyond that, the rolling hills that ensured his privacy. Yet none of it filled the hollow space in his chest that had been there for years. He loosened his tie, a habit born of restlessness rather than discomfort. The silk was smooth beneath his fingers, probably cost more than what some people made in a week. But what good was all this wealth when he came home to empty rooms and echoing halls? His thoughts drifted, as they often did in quiet moments like these, to Amelia. The memory of her smile still had the power to make his heart clench, even after all this time. He could almost hear her laugh, see the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she was truly happy. Those memories were both a comfort and a torment, reminders of what he'd lost and couldn't seem to replace. Running a hand through his dark hair, Jameson turned back to his desk, where spreadsheets and contracts awaited his attention. This was his life now. Numbers, deals, and the endless expansion of his empire. It was easier to bury himself in work than to face the emptiness that seemed to follow him from room to room in this too large house. The sudden sound of running footsteps broke through his thoughts. Jameson froze, his body tensing. He wasn't expecting anyone, and his security was usually impeccable. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by what sounded like small, panicked breaths. Before he could move toward the door, it burst open. A little girl stood there, her chest heaving, dark hair wild around her face. Her eyes were wide with fear, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please help me!" she cried out, her voice trembling. "He's coming to take me away." Jameson's protective instincts kicked in immediately, overriding his surprise. He crossed the room in quick strides, kneeling down to the girl's level. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, and she was shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Who's coming?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. "Where's your mother?" The girl hiccuped through her tears. "Mom's ex-husband. He found us again. Mom said to run if I ever saw him, and I saw his car coming up the road, and I just ran and ran." She looked over her shoulder fearfully, as if expecting to see someone there. "You're safe here," Jameson assured her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. He could feel her trembling beneath his touch. "I'm Jameson. Can you tell me your name?" "Ella," she whispered, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. "I'm Ella." Something about her seemed familiar, though Jameson couldn't quite place it. Maybe it was the way she held herself, or the shape of her eyes. There was something that tugged at his memory, but he pushed the thought aside. Right now, this frightened child needed his help. "Come on, Ella," he said, standing up and gently guiding her further into the office. "Let's get you somewhere safe and comfortable, and then we'll figure out how to contact your mother. She must be worried sick about you." He led her to the leather sofa against the wall, grabbing the throw blanket that lay across its back. As he wrapped it around her shoulders, Ella seemed to relax slightly, though her eyes remained wide and watchful. "Would you like some water?" he asked, already moving toward the small refrigerator he kept in the corner of his office. She nodded, clutching the blanket tighter around herself. Jameson brought her a bottle of water, watching as she took small sips. Her hands were still shaking, but the water seemed to help calm her somewhat. "Ella, I need you to tell me a bit more about what's happening," he said, sitting down beside her, but maintaining enough distance not to crowd her. "Who is this man you're running from?" "His name is Luke," she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "He used to be married to my mum. He's really mean, and he scares her. We moved away to get away from him, but he keeps finding us." Jameson felt a surge of anger at the fear in her voice. No child should have to live like this, constantly looking over their shoulder. "Do you know your mum's phone number? We should let her know where you are." Ella nodded, reciting a number that Jameson quickly dialed on his cell phone. It rang several times before going to voicemail. He tried again, with the same result. "She might be hiding too," Ella said softly, pulling the blanket even tighter around herself. "Sometimes we have to hide when he comes around." The protective instinct in Jameson grew stronger. He reached for his desk phone, pressing the button for security. "Frank, I need you to do a sweep of the perimeter. We may have an unwanted visitor trying to get onto the property. And send someone up to my office. I have a young guest who needs protection." He turned back to Ella, who was watching him with a mix of fear and hope. "No one is going to hurt you here, Ella. I promise you that. This is probably the safest place you could have run to." As if to prove his point, there was a knock at the door, and one of his security team members entered. "Mr. Hayes, this is Ella," Jameson explained. "She needs our protection. I want someone with her at all times until we can contact her mother." The security guard nodded, taking up a position near the door. Ella seemed to relax a little more at the sight of additional protection. "Thank you," she whispered to Jameson, her small voice full of gratitude. "Most people don't believe me when I tell them about Luke. They think I'm making it up. I believe you," Jameson said firmly, his heart aching for what this child had been through. "And I'm going to help you and your mother, Ella. That's a promise." As the sun continued to set outside his window, casting the room in soft golden light, Jameson couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change dramatically. He looked at the little girl curled up on his sofa, finally beginning to breathe normally, and knew that keeping her safe was now his top priority. All thoughts of spreadsheets and contracts were forgotten as he settled in to wait, ready to face whatever came next. The security guard's radio crackled with updates about the perimeter check, but Jameson's attention remained focused on Ella. There was something about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on, that stirred deep emotions in him. Perhaps it was just his protective nature, or maybe it was the way her presence had suddenly filled some of the emptiness in his home. Whatever it was, he knew with certainty that he would do whatever it took to keep this child safe. Jameson was still processing the events of the afternoon when hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway outside his office. The door burst open, revealing a woman whose presence made his heart stop. Her dark hair was wind-blown, her face flushed from running, but he would have recognized her anywhere. "Amelia," he breathed, the name falling from his lips like a forgotten prayer. "Mommy!" Ella cried out, jumping up from the sofa and running to her mother. Amelia wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her close. "Oh, baby, I was so worried." Her voice trembled as she pressed kisses to the top of Ella's head. When she finally looked up at Jameson, her eyes were filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go." Jameson stood frozen, his mind struggling to process the scene before him. Amelia, the woman who had haunted his dreams for years, was here in his office, holding a little girl who had run to him for safety. The security guard looked between them uncertainly. "It's all right, Thompson," Jameson said, finding his voice. "You can wait outside." Once the guard had left, Amelia's shoulders sagged, as if the weight of keeping herself together was too much. "Luke found us again," she said, her voice breaking. "We thought we were safe here, that he wouldn't track us down. But," she shuddered, "he showed up at Ella's school today." Jameson's jaw tightened. "Tell me everything." Amelia guided Ella back to the sofa, keeping her daughter close as they sat down. "Luke, he's my ex-husband. We were married for less than a year, but it was long enough for him to show his true colors." Her hand trembled as she smoothed Ella's hair. "He has a violent temper. The things he did—" She swallowed hard, glancing at Ella. "We left him 3 years ago, but he keeps finding us. He says he has rights to Ella, that she belongs to him." "He doesn't," Ella whispered fiercely. "He's not my real daddy." Jameson watched as Amelia's face paled at their daughter's words. The room seemed to grow smaller, more intense, as if the very air was charged with unspoken truths. "He showed up at her school," Amelia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "He tried to convince the teachers he had custody rights. Thank God they called me first. I got there just as he was arguing with the principal." Her eyes met Jameson's, filled with desperation. "He's dangerous, Jameson. The things he's capable of, I've seen it firsthand." Jameson moved closer, sitting in the chair across from them. "Why did you come here, Amelia, after all these years?" She looked down at her hands, twisted together in her lap. "Because I know you have the resources to protect us. Because—" She took a shaky breath. "Because we should have come to you years ago." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the room as silence fell between them. Jameson could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. He looked at Ella, really looked at her, and noticed things he hadn't before. The shape of her eyes, the determined set of her jaw, features that seemed hauntingly familiar. "Please," Amelia whispered. "I know I have no right to ask for your help, not after everything, but Ella's safety is all that matters to me now." Jameson leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Tell me why you really came here, Amelia. The whole truth." Ella looked between her mother and Jameson, her small face serious. Then, before Amelia could speak, she turned to Jameson and whispered the words that would change everything. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The world seemed to stop spinning. Jameson sat back heavily in his chair, the air leaving his lungs in a rush. He stared at Ella, his daughter, his child, seeing now with painful clarity all the pieces of himself reflected in her face. The truth hit him like a physical blow, leaving him speechless. Amelia was crying silently now, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you. I wanted to tell you so many times." But Jameson couldn't find words. His mind was racing through memories, counting back years, remembering their last days together, realizing that Amelia must have been pregnant when she left. All this time, he'd had a daughter, a beautiful, brave little girl who had run to him for protection, not even knowing who he was. The silence in the room was deafening as Jameson struggled to process this earth-shattering revelation. Ella watched him with those familiar eyes, his eyes, waiting for his response. But how could he possibly find words to express the overwhelming mix of emotions coursing through him? Joy, anger, grief, love, they all warred within his heart as he sat there, struck speechless by 4 simple words that had just changed his entire world. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Jameson's study, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. He stood by his desk, watching as Amelia entered the room, her steps hesitant. The night before had been a blur of arrangements, getting Ella and Amelia settled into guest rooms, ensuring security measures were in place. But now, in the harsh light of day, the reality of their situation demanded attention. "We need to talk," Jameson said, his voice controlled despite the storm of emotions churning inside him. Amelia nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as if seeking protection. "I know. 8 years," he said quietly. Then his voice rose. 8 years, Amelia. You kept my daughter from me for 8 years. She flinched at his words but held her ground. "I know it was wrong. I've carried that guilt every single day." "Guilt?" Jameson moved closer, his eyes intense. "Guilt doesn't make up for lost birthdays, first steps, first words. I missed everything. Every important moment of her life, gone." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. "I was scared, Jameson. When I found out I was pregnant, everything was falling apart between us. And then Luke." She took a shaky breath. "He was already making threats, showing up at my workplace, following me." "You could have come to me." Jameson's voice cracked with emotion. "I would have protected you both." "Would you have?" Amelia challenged softly. "We barely spoke those last few months. You were always working, always distant. When I tried to talk to you about our problems, you shut down." Jameson ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "So you decided to punish me by hiding my child?" "No." Amelia's voice rose, then she quickly lowered it, mindful of Ella sleeping upstairs. "It wasn't about punishment. I was young and terrified. Luke had convinced me that you'd reject us, that you'd see the baby as an obligation, a burden on your empire. And you believed him." Jameson's voice was filled with disbelief and hurt. "I believed my own fears," Amelia admitted. "We were already falling apart, Jameson. You were becoming this different person, consumed by your work, building walls around yourself. I couldn't bear the thought of you rejecting not just me, but our child too." Jameson turned away, moving to the window. The manicured gardens below seemed to mock him with their perfect order when his world felt so chaotic. "You didn't give me the chance to prove you wrong." "I know," Amelia whispered. "And watching Ella grow, seeing pieces of you in her every day, it killed me inside. She has your determination, your quiet strength, the way she furrows her brow when she's thinking. It's all you." He closed his eyes, letting her words paint pictures of moments he'd never witness. "Tell me everything," he said finally. "I want to know why you really left." Amelia sank into one of the leather chairs, her shoulders heavy with the weight of long-held secrets. It wasn't just about Luke, though his threats were real enough. It was about us, about how far apart we'd grown. Remember those last few months? Jameson nodded slowly, memories flooding back. The merger, the expansion into Asia. "You were never home?" Amelia continued. "When you were distracted, distant. I tried to talk to you about how I was feeling, about our future, but you always had another meeting, another crisis to handle." "I was building something for our future," Jameson defended, but his voice lacked conviction. "Were you?" Amelia asked gently. "Or were you hiding from what was happening between us? When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified of bringing a child into that uncertainty." Jameson turned back to face her, his expression pained. "So instead of fighting for us, you ran. You let Luke's manipulation and your own fears make decisions that affected all our lives. I'm not proud of it." Amelia admitted, wiping away tears. Every year on her birthday, every Christmas, every time she asked about her real father. I wanted to tell you, but the more time passed, the harder it became, and Luke's threats kept getting worse. What kind of threats? He said he'd take her away if I ever tried to leave him. He had connections, people who could make us disappear. After we finally escaped, he kept finding us, claiming he had legal rights to her since we were married when she was born. Amelia's voice shook. I was trapped in a web of my own making, and I couldn't see a way out that didn't put Ella at risk. Jameson moved closer, his anger warring with his need to understand. And now? Why tell me now? Because Ella deserves to know her father. Amelia said simply. Because I'm tired of running, of living in fear. Because... She hesitated, then continued. Because seeing you yesterday, watching how naturally you responded to protecting her, I realized what I'd stolen from both of you. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. Jameson stood there, processing her words, feeling the weight of lost years pressing down on him. I want to know everything about her, he said finally. Every detail, every milestone I missed. And I want to be part of her life now. Really part of it, not just as a protector from Luke. Amelia nodded, relief visible on her face. She's amazing, Jameson. So smart, so kind. She loves books, just like you. And she has this way of seeing right through people's defenses. As Amelia began sharing stories of their daughter's life, Jameson listened intently, his heart aching for every moment he'd missed, but grateful for this chance to know his child. The anger wasn't gone. It would take time to process the years of deception, but something else was growing stronger. The fierce need to protect and love the daughter he'd just discovered. Through the window, the morning sun continued its climb, casting new light on old wounds and illuminating the path forward. Complicated and uncertain, but full of possibility. Jameson sat in his home office, the soft glow of his computer screen illuminating his face in the growing darkness. Files and documents were spread across his mahogany desk, police reports, court records, and private investigator notes. Each new piece of information about Luke made his jaw clench tighter. Sir, his security chief, Thompson, entered with another stack of papers. The background check you requested just came in. Jameson reached for the documents, his eyes scanning the pages. 3 assault charges in the past 5 years. He muttered, his voice tight with controlled anger. 2 restraining orders from previous relationships. There's more, Thompson said, pointing to a highlighted section. He's been investigated for connections to human trafficking, though nothing was ever proven. The detective who worked the case noted that witnesses kept disappearing or changing their stories. Running a hand through his dark hair, Jameson leaned back in his leather chair. The weight of what he was reading settled heavily on his shoulders. Luke wasn't just some angry ex-husband, he was a genuine threat to his daughter's safety. Down the hall he could hear Ella's laughter floating through the house. The sound, so pure and innocent, made his protective instincts surge. She had no idea of the darkness that threatened her world, and he intended to keep it that way. Amelia knocked softly on the office door frame. Ella's asking if you'll join us for dinner, she said, then noticed the scattered papers. Her face paled. What did you find? Jameson gestured for her to come in and close the door. Luke's worse than we thought. Why didn't you go to the police? Amelia sank into one of the visitor chairs, wringing her hands. I tried once. He had friends at the precinct. The complaint disappeared, and the next day he showed up at Ella's school. He didn't do anything, just stood there watching. The message was clear. That won't happen again, Jameson said firmly. He pulled up some documents on his computer screen. I've already contacted Judge Martinez. She owes me a favor. We can file for an emergency protection order first thing tomorrow morning." Watching him work, seeing his determination to protect their daughter, Amelia felt a familiar warmth in her chest. It was the same feeling she'd had years ago, when she'd first fallen in love with his quiet strength and unwavering sense of justice. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for bringing all this chaos into your life again." Jameson looked up, his expression softening. "Don't apologize for protecting our daughter. I just wish—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I wish you'd trusted me sooner." "I know." Amelia nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Seeing you with her now, how naturally you've stepped into being her father. I was wrong to keep you apart." Their eyes met across the desk, years of unspoken words hanging between them. Jameson felt the old pull, the magnetic force that had always drawn them together, but now tempered by time and hurt. "Mr. Hayes," Thompson interrupted the moment. "There's something else you should see." He handed over another report. "Luke's been making calls to some questionable individuals. Based on the pattern, it looks like he's planning something." Jameson's expression hardened as he read. "Double the security detail. I want cameras covering every angle of the property. No one gets within 100 yards without us knowing." "Already done, sir. I've also assigned personal protection to both Ms. Walker and the young miss." "Good." Jameson turned to Amelia. "We should tell Ella something. Not everything, but enough so she understands why she needs to be careful." Amelia nodded reluctantly. "She's smart. She already knows something's wrong. This morning she asked why there were so many new garden workers around." The corners of Jameson's mouth twitched despite the situation. "Observant, like her mother. Stubborn, like her father," Amelia countered, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. Their shared moment of levity was interrupted by Thompson clearing his throat. "Sir, there's one more thing. Luke's been seen meeting with a custody lawyer, a particularly aggressive one known for taking unusual approaches to winning cases." Amelia's face went white. "He's going to try to take her legally?" "Let him try." Jameson's voice was steel. "I've got the best family law team in the country on speed dial. Plus, once the judge sees his record, it's not that simple." Amelia cut in. "He was married to me when Ella was born. His name is on her birth certificate. And I—" She swallowed hard. "I let him play the role of her father for years. A good lawyer could use that." Jameson stood, walking around the desk to stand beside her chair. "Listen to me. He will not get near her. I don't care what it takes. Money, influence, legal maneuvering. I will not let him hurt either of you again." Amelia looked up at him, seeing the fierce determination in his eyes. It was the same look he'd had years ago when fighting for his company, for his dreams, but this time he was fighting for something far more precious. "I never stopped loving you, you know," she whispered, then immediately looked away, shocked by her own admission. Jameson's hand, which had been reaching to comfort her, froze in mid-air. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and pain. Before either could address the confession, Ella's voice called from down the hall. "Mom! Dad! The pasta's getting cold!" "We should go," Amelia said quickly, standing and smoothing her skirt. We can talk more later." Jameson nodded, his expression unreadable. As they walked to the dining room, he couldn't help but notice how naturally Ella had called him Dad, how right it felt to have both of them in his home. But Luke's threats loomed like storm clouds on the horizon, threatening the fragile peace they'd found. In the dining room, Ella had already set the table for 3, complete with cloth napkins and the fancy water glasses she'd discovered in the kitchen. Looking at her hopeful face, Jameson made a silent vow. He would protect this. Protect them, no matter the cost. The life he'd built, the empire he'd created, none of it meant anything compared to keeping his daughter safe and, perhaps, healing the wounds of the past with the only woman he'd ever truly loved. Jameson stood at his office window, watching the sun sink behind the manicured gardens of his estate. The fading light cast long shadows across the lawn, where, just days ago, a frightened little girl had run into his life and changed everything. His fingers traced the cool glass as he spotted Ella playing with one of the security guards, who was actually a highly trained operative, near the fountain. The sight of her dark curls, so much like Amelia's, made his chest tighten. 8 years. He'd missed 8 years of his daughter's life. First steps, first words, first day of school. Moments he could never get back. The weight of that loss felt heavier with each passing day. "Sir?" Thompson's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "The surveillance team reports Luke's been making more calls. He's getting desperate." Jameson turned from the window, his jaw set. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. He moved to his desk and pressed the intercom. "Sarah, please ask Amelia to join me in my office." While waiting, he reviewed the thick file Thompson had compiled on Luke. Police reports, restraining orders, suspicious financial transactions. It painted a clear picture of a dangerous man who wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted, or until someone stopped him. Amelia arrived moments later, her face tight with worry. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" "No, nothing's wrong," Jameson assured her, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "But we need to talk about how to handle Luke." She sat down, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. A nervous habit he remembered from years ago. "What do you mean?" "I'm done waiting for him to make a move." Jameson's voice was firm. "We need to confront him directly. End this before he can hurt either of you." "Confront him?" Amelia's eyes widened. "Jameson, you don't know what he's capable of." "Actually, I do." He slid the file across the desk. "Thompson's been very thorough. 3 assault charges in the past 5 years, all dropped when witnesses mysteriously recanted. Multiple restraining orders, suspected connections to local crime families." He leaned forward. "But he's never faced someone like me." Amelia flipped through the file, her hands trembling slightly. "This is worse than I thought. If he's really connected to these people, then it's even more important we deal with him now." Jameson finished. "I want to arrange a meeting. Somewhere public but controlled. My terms, my ground." "And what exactly do you plan to say to him?" Amelia closed the file, her voice sharp with fear. "He won't just walk away because you ask nicely." Jameson's expression hardened. "No, he'll walk away because I'll make it clear that the alternative is much worse. I have resources he can't imagine, Amelia. And unlike him, I know how to use power without breaking laws." They sat in silence for a moment, the ticking of the antique clock on the wall marking time. Through the window they could hear Ella's laughter floating up from the garden. "I should have told you about her," Amelia said suddenly, her voice thick with emotion. "Every time she did something amazing, every time she asked about her real father, I should have told you." Jameson felt the familiar ache in his chest. "Why didn't you?" "At first it was fear," she admitted. "Luke had just... and I was so young, so scared. Then, as time passed, it became shame. How could I show up years later and say, 'By the way, here's your daughter'?" She wiped at her eyes. "And maybe part of me was afraid you'd become exactly what you are now. Successful, powerful, everything I'm not. I thought you'd take her away." "I would never," Jameson started, then stopped himself. The truth was, he didn't know what he would have done back then. He'd been different, harder, focused only on building his empire. He stood and walked around the desk, kneeling beside her chair. "Listen to me. What matters now is keeping her safe. Both of you. He took her hand, feeling the slight tremor in her fingers. Do you trust me to do that? Amelia looked down at their joined hands. I never stopped trusting you, Jameson. That wasn't why I left. The admission hung between them, heavy with unspoken meanings. Before he could respond, Thompson appeared in the doorway. Sir, the team has Luke's location. He's at the Metropolitan Hotel, meeting with that lawyer again. Jameson stood, not letting go of Amelia's hand. Set it up. Tomorrow, neutral ground. Make sure he knows refusing isn't an option. What about Ella? Amelia asked. She can't be anywhere near him. She'll stay here with extra security. We'll tell her we have some business to take care of. He squeezed her hand gently. It's time to end this, Amelia. Time to make sure you both have a future without looking over your shoulders. As if on cue, Ella's voice echoed from the hallway. Mom? Dad? Can we have ice cream for dessert? Jameson felt his heart squeeze at the word Dad. Every time she said it, it felt more real, more precious. He looked at Amelia, seeing his own emotions reflected in her eyes. We should go down, she said softly. She knows when something's wrong. They found Ella in the kitchen, already pulling bowls from the cabinet with the help of Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper. Her face lit up when she saw them. Dad, did you know we have 5 different kinds of ice cream? She held up her fingers to demonstrate. 5? Is that so? Jameson couldn't help smiling, even as his mind worked through tomorrow's confrontation. Well, I suppose we'll have to try them all. For research purposes, of course. As they settled around the kitchen island, Jameson watched his daughter chattering about her day, Amelia adding comments and laughing at Ella's dramatic storytelling. This was what he'd missed all those years, what he should have had, what Luke had tried to steal. Tomorrow he would make sure that never happened again. He had built his empire from nothing, faced down corporate raiders and hostile takeovers, but this, protecting his family, would be the most important battle of his life, and he had no intention of losing. The Metropolitan Hotel's restaurant buzzed with the quiet murmur of lunchtime conversations. Jameson sat at a corner table, his back to the wall, watching the entrance. The elegant space, with its crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, seemed an oddly civilized setting for what was about to unfold. Amelia sat beside him, her fingers wrapped so tightly around her water glass that her knuckles had turned white. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, she whispered. We need to face him, Jameson replied, his voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. Better here, on our terms, than waiting for him to make another move. The maitre d' approached their table, his expression professional but concerned. Mr. Hayes, the other party has arrived. Luke strode in behind him, and Jameson's jaw clenched. The man wore an expensive suit that somehow still looked cheap on him, his swagger speaking of unearned confidence. 2 men flanked him, hired muscle trying to look like business associates. Well, well, Luke drawled, dropping into the chair across from them without waiting for an invitation. Quite the cozy setup you've got here. His eyes raked over Amelia, who visibly flinched. Looking good, Em. Better than when you ran off. Jameson's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. This meeting isn't about the past, Luke. It's about Ella's future. Ah, yes, my stepdaughter. Luke's smile didn't reach his eyes. Sweet kid. Shame about her being kept from her family for so long. You were never her family, Amelia said, her voice trembling but determined. Luke's facade cracked for a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. I raised her while this rich boy was off playing businessman. Where were you when she took her first steps, Hayes? When she started school? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a growl. Face it, You're nothing but a sperm donor with a fancy suit." Jameson remained perfectly still, his expression unchanged. "Are you finished?" "Not even close." Luke pulled out a folder and slapped it on the table. "See, I've got rights. I was there playing daddy while you were missing in action. My lawyers say I've got a solid case for custody." "Your lawyers are wrong," Jameson replied calmly. "And they know it, just like they know about the restraining order Amelia filed 3 years ago, about the police reports, the hospital visits." Luke's face darkened. "Lies and exaggerations. You know how women can be, so emotional. Everything is documented." Jameson continued, as if Luke hadn't spoken. "Every bruise, every threat, every time you raised your hand to my daughter." "Your daughter." Luke's laugh was ugly. "You think you can just walk in after 8 years and claim her? I'm the one who terrorized her." Amelia interrupted, finding her voice. "Who made her hide in closets when you were drunk? Who made her afraid to bring friends home?" Luke's hand shot across the table, but Jameson was faster. He caught Luke's wrist in a grip that made the other man wince. "Touch her," Jameson said softly, "and I'll break every bone in your hand." The 2 bodyguards started forward, but Luke waved them back. "Big man now, aren't you? Think your money makes you untouchable?" "No." Jameson released his wrist. "But it does make me patient and thorough. Would you like to know what else my investigators found?" Before Luke could respond, movement at the restaurant entrance caught their attention. 2 police officers were approaching their table, accompanied by a man in a suit who carried himself with authority. "Luke Davidson." The suited man pulled out a badge. "Detective Morris, Special Victims Unit. We need to have a conversation about some outstanding warrants in Nevada." The color drained from Luke's face. "This is a setup," he snarled, looking between Jameson and Amelia. "You planned this." "No," Jameson replied. "Your past caught up with you all on its own. Those other women you hurt, they started talking. Funny how that happens when someone finally stands up to a bully." Luke stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll be back, and when I am— Sir!" One of the officers cut in. "Please come with us quietly. Don't make this worse for yourself." The restaurant had gone silent, all eyes on their corner. Luke looked around, seemingly realizing, for the first time, how many witnesses surrounded them. His shoulders slumped slightly, but his eyes remained hard when he looked at Amelia. "Watch your back," he said quietly. "Both of you." They watched as the officers led Luke away, his bodyguards melting into the background rather than risk involvement. Amelia released a shaky breath she'd been holding. "He'll make bail," she said softly. "This won't stop him." Jameson reached over and took her hand. "No, but it's a start. And now we have proof that he's still making threats. That will help with the restraining order." "I've never seen him that angry before," Amelia whispered. "And I've seen him angry plenty of times." "He's losing control," Jameson agreed. "Of the situation, of you, of his facade. Men like that are dangerous when they're desperate." A waiter approached cautiously, asking if they wanted to order. Jameson shook his head and asked for the check instead. They needed to get back to Ella, to make sure she was safe. As they walked through the hotel lobby, Amelia suddenly stopped. "Thank you," she said, looking up at him. "For being here, for handling him so calmly. I know it couldn't have been easy." Jameson thought about the rage he'd contained, the effort it had taken not to leap across the table and show Luke exactly what happened to men who threatened his family. "It wasn't," he admitted, "but losing control wouldn't have helped anyone, especially not Ella." They stepped out into the afternoon sunlight, and Jameson instinctively scanned the street for any sign of Luke's men. The police car was gone, but he knew this was far from over. Luke's type never gave up easily. They just got more desperate, more dangerous. "We should get back," he said, guiding Amelia toward where Thompson waited with the car. "Ella will be wondering where we are." As they drove home, Jameson watched the city blur past his window, his mind already working on next steps. They would need better security, legal preparations, contingency plans. Luke's threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, promising trouble to come. But for now, they had won the first round. It would have to be enough. The mansion was quiet except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Ella had gone to bed hours ago, exhausted from the day's events, leaving Amelia and Jameson alone in his study. The warm glow of a table lamp cast long shadows across the room, creating an intimate atmosphere that made it harder to maintain the emotional walls they'd built over the years. Amelia sat in one of the leather armchairs, her fingers wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. Jameson stood by the window, his silhouette dark against the moonlit garden outside. "I never wanted any of this." Amelia finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to bring all this chaos into your life again." Jameson turned from the window, his expression softening as he looked at her. "You should have come to me sooner, the moment Luke became a threat." "I couldn't." Amelia set her cup down, the china making a soft clink against the wooden side table. "After everything that happened between us, I didn't think I had the right." "Tell me," Jameson said, moving to sit in the chair across from her. "Tell me everything." Amelia drew in a shaky breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "When Luke first came into my life, I was broken, lost. You and we had just fallen apart, and I felt so alone." "I remember," Jameson said quietly, pain flickering across his features. "He seemed kind at first, attentive. He made me feel safe when everything else felt uncertain." Amelia's voice cracked slightly. But it was all an act. The real Luke started showing up in little ways at first: anger over small things, controlling behavior, isolation from friends. By the time I realized how dangerous he was, I was already trapped. Jameson leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "Why didn't you reach out to me then?" "Because I didn't trust anyone anymore," Amelia admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "After our breakup, after the way things ended, I convinced myself that I couldn't depend on anyone else, that I had to handle everything alone. I never stopped caring about you, Amelia. I know that now," she whispered. "But back then, all I could see was how we'd hurt each other, how everything had fallen apart. When I discovered I was pregnant with Ella, I was terrified. Luke was becoming more violent, more unpredictable. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't." Her voice trailed off as tears began to fall. Jameson reached for a box of tissues on the side table and handed them to her, their fingers brushing briefly. "I couldn't come back to you," she continued after wiping her eyes. "I felt like I'd failed at everything. Our relationship, my judgment with Luke, protecting our child. The shame was overwhelming." Jameson's jaw tightened. "So you ran?" "Yes," Amelia acknowledged. "I ran as far as I could, changed my name, moved from city to city, anything to keep Ella safe from Luke. But I also kept her from you. And that—" She looked directly at him, her eyes filled with regret. "That was wrong. I know that now." 8 years, Amelia. Jameson's voice was thick with emotion. 8 years of not knowing I had a daughter, of wondering what happened to you, if you were safe, if you were happy. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I convinced myself I was protecting her, protecting all of us. But I was really just protecting myself from facing the truth, that I was scared. Scared of Luke, scared of letting anyone close again, scared of being hurt. Jameson stood up abruptly, running a hand through his hair as he paced the room. Do you know what it does to a person, thinking they weren't good enough? That the woman they loved couldn't trust them enough to ask for help? It wasn't about you not being good enough, Amelia said, her voice breaking. It was about me not feeling good enough. After everything with Luke, I felt worthless, damaged. How could I come back to you like that? Jameson stopped pacing and turned to face her, his expression pained. Because I loved you, Amelia. Despite everything that happened between us, despite our mistakes, I never stopped loving you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with years of unspoken feelings. Amelia covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jameson moved to kneel beside her chair, gently pulling her hands away from her face. Look at me, he said softly. When she met his eyes, he continued, What happened in the past? All of it. We can't change it. But we have to find a way forward, for Ella's sake, if nothing else. I don't know how. Amelia admitted. Luke is still out there, and he's not going to stop. And you and I, there's so much between us that's broken. Then we fix it, Jameson said firmly. One day at a time. But you have to trust me, Amelia. No more running. No more secrets. She nodded slowly, wiping away fresh tears. I want to trust again. But every time I think about Luke, about what he might do... He won't touch you or Ella. Jameson's voice was steel. I promise you that, but you have to let me help. Both of you. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight, its deep chimes echoing through the quiet house. Amelia looked toward the sound, then back at Jameson, still kneeling beside her chair. I should check on Ella, she said softly. Jameson nodded and stood, offering his hand to help her up. She took it, and for a moment they stood close, the years between them feeling both vast and insignificant. We'll figure this out, he said quietly. Together this time. Amelia nodded, but her eyes still held uncertainty. As she turned to leave the study, Jameson called after her. Amelia. She paused in the doorway, looking back at him. Thank you for telling me the truth. Finally. She gave him a sad smile, then disappeared into the darkened hallway, leaving Jameson alone with the weight of their conversation and the bittersweet knowledge that while some wounds were beginning to heal, others were still raw and bleeding. Jameson sat at his desk, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he delved deeper into Luke's past. The soft glow of multiple computer screens illuminated his face in the dimly lit study. Files, both digital and physical, were spread across his desk. Bank statements, property records, and business dealings that painted a troubling picture of Luke's activities over the years. His jaw clenched as he uncovered yet another shell company, clearly designed to hide questionable transactions. The legal system was moving too slowly for his liking, and every day that passed was another day Ella remained at risk. He wouldn't wait for the courts to catch up. What are you doing? Amelia's voice startled him from the doorway. She stood there in a simple sweater and jeans, her face etched with concern. Research, Jameson replied without looking up. Luke's been careful, but he's left traces. Everyone does. Amelia moved closer, her footsteps hesitant on the hardwood floor. You shouldn't be doing this. You're putting yourself at risk. I'm putting myself at risk? Now he did look up, his eyes intense. He's threatening our daughter, Amelia. What do you expect me to do? Sit back and wait for the courts to decide? The police are already investigating him, she argued, wrapping her arms around herself. If you start poking around in his business, he'll come after you too. You don't know what he's capable of. Jameson pushed back from his desk, standing to his full height. Actually, I do. That's exactly what I've been learning. He gestured to the screens. Did you know he's been laundering money through fake construction companies? Or that he's got connections to some very dangerous people? Stop, Amelia pleaded. Just stop. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You're going to get yourself hurt, or worse. I can handle myself, Jameson insisted, his voice firm but gentle. What I can't handle is knowing our daughter is in danger and doing nothing about it. Amelia moved to stand directly in front of him, her eyes swimming with tears. You think I don't understand that? I've spent 8 years trying to protect her. But going after Luke directly, it won't end well. He doesn't play fair. Neither do I, Jameson responded, his expression hardening. Not when it comes to protecting the people I care about. Their eyes locked, and for a moment the air between them crackled with unspoken emotions. Amelia was the first to look away, turning to study the information displayed on his screens. What's your plan? She asked quietly. Even if you find something incriminating, what then? Jameson moved to stand beside her, pointing to various documents on the screen. Look here. These transactions, they're suspicious. With enough digging, I can prove he's been involved in illegal activities. Once I have concrete evidence, I can turn it over to the authorities. And in the meantime, Amelia challenged. While you're playing detective, what's stopping him from coming after Ella? Nothing is going to happen to her, Jameson stated firmly. I've increased security around the estate. There are guards watching the property 24/7. She's safe here. Amelia turned to face him, her expression pained. You can't guarantee that. Nobody can. Luke, he finds ways to hurt people. He's patient. He'll wait for the right moment. Then we don't give him that moment, Jameson insisted. He reached out, hesitating for a second before placing his hands on her shoulders. Trust me, Amelia. Please. She didn't pull away from his touch, but her eyes filled with fresh tears. I do trust you. That's not the problem. I just can't bear the thought of losing you, too. Not again. Not like this. The admission hung between them, heavy with meaning. Jameson's hands tightened slightly on her shoulders, and he found himself drawing her closer. You're not going to lose me, he said softly. But I need you to understand. I have to do this. Every instinct I have as a father, as a man who... He paused, struggling with the words. As someone who cares deeply about both of you, tells me I can't step back from this fight. Amelia closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. I understand, I do, but please be careful. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise, he whispered, and before he could stop himself, he pulled her into an embrace. She stiffened for a moment before relaxing against him, her arms wrapping around his waist. They stood like that for several long moments, the comfort of their shared warmth a stark contrast to the tension of their discussion. When they finally separated, Amelia wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. At least let me help. I know things about Luke, things that might be useful. Jameson studied her face, noting the determination that had replaced the fear in her eyes. Are you sure? You don't have to— Yes, I do, she interrupted. You're right. We can't just wait for something to happen. If we're going to fight, we should fight together. A small smile tugged at the corner of Jameson's mouth. Together, he agreed, turning back to his desk. Tell me everything you know about his business dealings. As they settled in to work, shoulder to shoulder at his desk, Jameson couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. The situation with Luke still loomed dangerous and uncertain, but having Amelia beside him, working with him instead of against him, felt right in a way he couldn't quite explain. They worked late into the night, piecing together the puzzle of Luke's illegal activities, each revelation bringing them closer to the evidence they needed. And though neither of them spoke of it, they both felt the shift in their relationship, a tentative bridge being built over the chasm of their past, founded on their shared determination to protect their daughter at any cost. The early morning sunlight filtered through the windows of Jameson's study, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Amelia stood by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she watched Ella play in the garden below. The little girl was chasing butterflies, seemingly oblivious to the weight of the decisions being made above her. "I found a place," Amelia said quietly, not turning to face Jameson. "It's a small cottage, about 3 hours from here. Remote enough to be safe, but close enough to civilization that we won't feel completely cut off." Jameson looked up from his desk, his fingers pausing over his keyboard. "You don't have to leave," he said, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "I can protect you both here." Amelia finally turned to face him, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion from another sleepless night. "We can't stay here forever, Jameson. Luke knows where you live. He's probably watching the house right now." She crossed the room to stand before his desk. "The longer we stay, the more danger we put you in." "I don't care about the danger to me," Jameson insisted, rising from his chair. "I care about keeping you and Ella safe. And that's exactly why we need to go." Amelia's voice cracked slightly. "I've seen what Luke is capable of, the things he's done." She trailed off, her hand trembling as she pushed her hair back from her face. Jameson moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. "Tell me," he urged gently. "Help me understand." Amelia sank into one of the leather armchairs, her shoulders hunching as if under an invisible weight. "After I left you, when I found out I was pregnant, I was so scared and confused. Luke, he seemed kind at first, supportive." She gave a bitter laugh. "That's how he operates. He makes you feel safe, needed, until you're too tangled in his web to escape." Jameson knelt beside her chair, his presence steady and reassuring. "What did he do to you?" "It started small," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Comments about my clothes, who I talked to. Then it was my phone, my email. He had to know everything. If I was even 5 minutes late getting home." She shuddered. "The night I finally left, he'd been drinking. He threw a glass at my head, missed by inches. Ella was just 6 months old, sleeping in the next room. I knew if I stayed, one day he wouldn't miss." Jameson's hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight with anger. "Why didn't you come to me then?" "Because I was ashamed," Amelia admitted, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Ashamed that I'd let someone like that into my life, into Ella's life. Ashamed that I'd been too weak to leave sooner. And after how things ended between us..." She wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. "I didn't think I deserved your help." "Amelia," Jameson breathed, taking her hands in his. "Nothing that happened with Luke was your fault. And what happened between us, we were both young, both scared of what we felt. I should have fought harder for you." She squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his touch. "We can't change the past, but I can protect our daughter's future. That's why we need to go to the safe house, at least until you can get the evidence to the authorities." Jameson was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I understand," he finally said, "but I want regular check-ins, and I'm setting up a secure line of communication, one that Luke can't trace." "Thank you," Amelia whispered, "for understanding, for helping us, for..." She gestured vaguely between them. "For not hating me, after everything." "I could never hate you," Jameson said softly. "Even when I thought I wanted to, even when I was angry about Ella, I couldn't hate you. You're the strongest person I know, Amelia. Look at everything you've survived, everything you've done to protect our daughter." Fresh tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks. "I don't feel strong. Most days I feel like I'm just barely holding it together." "That's what makes you strong," Jameson insisted. "You keep going, keep fighting, even when you're scared. That's real strength." Through the window, they could hear Ella's delighted laughter as she continued her butterfly chase. The sound seemed to break something loose in Amelia, and she began to sob in earnest, years of pent-up fear and pain finally finding release. Jameson pulled her into his arms, holding her as she cried. He stroked her hair, murmuring soft words of comfort, his own heart aching for all she'd been through, for all the years they'd lost, for all the pain she'd carried alone. When her sobs finally subsided, Amelia pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this." "Don't apologize," Jameson said firmly. "You don't have to be strong all the time. Not anymore. Not with me." She looked up at him, really looked at him, seeing the same caring heart she'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "When did you get so wise?" she asked, managing a watery smile. "Probably around the same time I became a father," he replied, his own smile tinged with sadness. "Even if I didn't know it at the time." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both watching Ella through the window. Finally, Amelia spoke again. "We'll leave tonight, after dark. It's safer that way." Jameson nodded, though she could see how much it cost him to agree. "I'll have my security team sweep the route ahead of you, and I'll keep working on gathering evidence against Luke. The sooner we can prove his criminal activities, the sooner you can come home." The word home hung between them, heavy with meaning. Amelia found herself wondering when Jameson's mansion had started to feel like home, and how much of that feeling had to do with the man himself. "I'll go help Ella pack," she said, rising from the chair. Just a few essential things, nothing that would draw attention. Jameson stood as well, his hand catching hers one last time. "Promise me something?" "What?" "Promise me you won't disappear again, that you'll let me help this time, even from a distance." Amelia squeezed his hand, her eyes meeting his with newfound determination. "I promise. We're in this together now, aren't we?" "Together," he agreed, the word carrying the weight of both a promise and a hope. The manila envelope landed on Jameson's desk with a heavy thud. His lawyer, Richard Morton, stood before him with a grim expression that made Jameson's stomach clench. "Luke's filed for custody," Richard said, his voice tight. "He's claiming Amelia is an unfit mother." Jameson's fingers curled into fists as he opened the envelope. The legal documents inside were filled with accusations that made his blood boil. Luke had painted Amelia as unstable, citing her frequent moves and alleged paranoid behavior. He'd twisted her efforts to protect Ella into evidence of mental instability. "This is ridiculous," Jameson growled, throwing the papers back onto his desk. "Everyone knows Luke's the dangerous one. He's the reason they had to keep moving." Richard adjusted his tie, clearly uncomfortable. "The problem is, we don't have concrete proof of Luke's threats. He's been careful to keep his harassment just below the legal threshold. Meanwhile, he's gathered witnesses who will testify about Amelia's erratic behavior." "What witnesses?" "Former neighbors, a teacher from one of Ella's previous schools, even a landlord who claims Amelia broke her lease because she thought someone was following her." Richard sighed. "Luke's lawyer is good, Jameson. They're building a case that Amelia's paranoia has created an unstable environment for Ella." Jameson stood up, pacing the length of his office. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but he barely noticed it. His mind was racing, trying to find a solution. "We need to tell Amelia," he said finally. "She needs to know what she's up against." The drive to the safe house felt endless. Jameson's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. When he finally arrived, He found Amelia in the garden with Ella, teaching her daughter how to plant tomatoes. "Look, Daddy," Ella called out, her hands covered in dirt. "We're growing food." The sight of his daughter's innocent joy made his heart ache. How could anyone claim she wasn't being well cared for? The love between mother and daughter was obvious in every interaction, every shared smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," he managed, forcing a smile. "Could I borrow your mom for a minute?" Amelia must have sensed something in his tone because she immediately stood up, brushing dirt from her jeans. "Keep planting the seedlings, honey," she told Ella. "Remember what I showed you about spacing them." They walked to the far end of the garden, out of Ella's earshot. When Jameson showed Amelia the custody papers, her face went pale. "He can't," she whispered, hands shaking as she read through the documents. "He can't take her from me. She's my whole world, Jameson." "We won't let him," Jameson assured her, though his own heart was heavy with worry. "But we need to be prepared. His lawyer is building a case that makes you look unstable." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. "Because I tried to protect my daughter? Because I didn't stand still and let him terrorize us?" "I know it's not fair," Jameson said softly, reaching for her hand. "But we need to fight this the right way. We need to show the court that you're a loving, capable mother who's been protecting Ella from a real threat." Amelia pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. "What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just being paranoid? Luke can be so charming when he wants to be. He'll convince them he's changed, that he deserves a chance with Ella." "That won't happen," Jameson said firmly. "I won't let it happen. I have resources, Amelia. Good lawyers, investigators. We'll find proof of what he's done." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the old hurt in her eyes. "Like you had resources before, when we were younger and I needed you?" The words hit him like a physical blow. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "I didn't know. You never told me how bad things were." "Would it have mattered?" Amelia's voice cracked. "You were so focused on your empire, on proving yourself to your father. I felt like I was drowning, and you didn't even notice." The old guilt washed over him anew. "You're right," he admitted. "I was young and stupid and focused on all the wrong things. But I'm here now, Amelia. I want to make it right." She wiped away a tear. "I want to believe that, but everything's so complicated now. We have Ella to think about." "Exactly," Jameson said. "We have Ella to think about, which means we need to work together, to trust each other. Can you do that?" Before Amelia could answer, they heard Ella's excited voice. "Mom, Dad, come look. I finished planting all the tomatoes." They turned to see their daughter beaming with pride, her small hands covered in soil, her face glowing with accomplishment. The sight seemed to strengthen Amelia's resolve. "Yes," she said finally. "I can try to trust you again. For Ella's sake." Over the next few days, they worked with Richard to build their defense. Jameson hired private investigators to document Luke's history of violence and intimidation. They gathered character witnesses who could testify to Amelia's dedication as a mother. But the stress was taking its toll. Amelia grew more withdrawn, spending long hours staring out the window of the safe house. Jameson noticed dark circles forming under her eyes, heard her pacing at night when she should have been sleeping. One evening, after Ella had gone to bed, he found Amelia in the kitchen, clutching a cup of cold tea. "Talk to me," he said softly, sitting across from her at the small table. "What's going through your mind?" "I keep thinking about all the mistakes I've made," she whispered. "Maybe if I'd handled things differently with Luke from the beginning. Maybe if I'd told you about Ella sooner." "Stop," Jameson said firmly. "You did the best you could with an impossible situation. And Ella is amazing, kind, smart, brave. That's because of you, Emilia. You're a wonderful mother." She looked up at him, vulnerability clear in her eyes. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we'd stayed together? If I'd trusted you enough to tell you everything?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility and regret. Jameson reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I think about it all the time," he admitted. "But we can't change the past. All we can do is try to build a better future for Ella." "And for us?" Emilia asked softly. Jameson squeezed her hand. "I don't know what the future holds," he said honestly. "But I know I want to find out, if you're willing." Their gazes held for a long moment, years of unspoken feelings passing between them. Then, from upstairs, they heard Ella call out, "Mummy, I had a bad dream." Reality crashed back in, reminding them of the challenges they still faced. Emilia stood up, but before she went upstairs, she squeezed Jameson's hand one more time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for fighting with us, for not giving up." Jameson watched her go, his heart full of conflicting emotions. He knew the custody battle ahead would be brutal. Luke wouldn't give up easily, and his accusations would force them all to confront painful truths about the past. But watching Emilia climb the stairs to comfort their daughter, Jameson felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Judge Margaret Wilson adjusted her glasses, reviewing the final documents before her. Jameson sat rigid in his seat, his hand unconsciously gripping the wooden barrier that separated the gallery from the proceedings. Beside him, Emilia's breathing came in short, nervous bursts. Luke stood at the defendant's table, his usual arrogance dimmed by the weight of evidence stacked against him. His expensive suit couldn't hide the barely contained rage in his eyes as the prosecution presented their final arguments. District Attorney Sarah Chen's voice rang clear through the hushed courtroom. "Your Honor, the evidence before you shows a clear pattern of violence and intimidation spanning more than 8 years. Mr. Davidson's prior convictions for assault, combined with new evidence of his illegal business dealings and threatening behavior toward Ms. Roberts and her daughter, paint a picture of a man who poses an ongoing danger to society." Jameson watched as Luke's attorney attempted to counter the arguments, but the evidence was overwhelming. The private investigators Jameson had hired had uncovered a trail of violence that couldn't be explained away. Hospital records, police reports, and witness statements that told a story of brutality and control. Judge Wilson's gavel cracked through the air like a gunshot. "Based on the evidence presented and the severity of these charges, I am remanding the defendant into custody pending trial. Bail is denied." The words fell like stones in the quiet courtroom. 2 court officers approached Luke, who suddenly lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "This isn't over!" he shouted, struggling against the officers as they secured his hands behind his back. "You can't keep me away forever!" Emilia flinched at his outburst, and Jameson instinctively moved closer to her, his body forming a shield between her and Luke's fury. They watched in silence as Luke was led away, his threats echoing off the marble walls until the heavy wooden doors closed behind him. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the steps. Jameson loosened his tie, feeling the tension slowly drain from his shoulders. Their legal team gathered around, offering congratulations and discussing next steps, but he barely heard them. His attention was fixed on Emilia, who stood slightly apart from the group, her arms wrapped tightly around herself despite the warm spring air. After the lawyers departed, Jameson approached her carefully. "Do you want to talk?" Emilia nodded, though she wouldn't meet his eyes. "Not here." They drove in silence to a small park near the courthouse, one they used to visit years ago when they were younger, and their future seemed unlimited. The familiar setting felt right for the conversation they needed to have. They found a quiet bench overlooking a small pond. A family of ducks paddled nearby, the mother leading her ducklings in lazy circles through the water. Jameson watched them for a moment, thinking about his own family. The years lost, the memories he should have been part of. "He's gone," Amelia said softly, breaking the silence. "I can hardly believe it." "He can't hurt you or Ella anymore," Jameson assured her, though he knew the fear wouldn't disappear overnight. "The evidence against him is solid. He'll be in prison for a long time." Amelia nodded, twisting her hands in her lap. "I should feel relieved, but all I can think about is how different things might have been if I'd been braver back then. If I'd told you the truth about everything." Jameson felt the old hurt rise up in his chest. "Why didn't you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "All these years, Amelia. All the birthdays, the first steps, the first days of school, I missed everything. How could you keep that from me?" Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks. "I was so scared," she whispered. "When I found out I was pregnant, everything was already falling apart between us. You were working constantly, building your company, and I felt so alone. Then Luke started showing up at my workplace, making threats, and I panicked." "You could have come to me," Jameson said, the words heavy with regret. "I would have protected you both." "Would you?" Amelia turned to face him fully. "Back then, could you have stepped away from your empire long enough to really see what was happening? To be there when we needed you?" The question struck him like a physical blow because he knew she was right. He'd been obsessed with proving himself, with building something that would make his father proud. He'd taken Amelia's love for granted, assumed she would always be there waiting. "No," he admitted quietly. "I wasn't ready to be the man you needed, but that doesn't excuse keeping my daughter from me for 8 years. I know." Amelia's voice broke. "I know it was wrong. Every year on her birthday, every time she asked about her father, it felt like my heart was being torn in two. I wanted to tell you so many times, but the longer I waited, the harder it became. And then I heard about your success, saw your picture in magazines with different women, and I convinced myself you were better off without us complicating your life." Jameson reached out, taking her trembling hands in his. "I was never better off without you," he said firmly. "Those women, the success, none of it meant anything. I've spent the last 8 years trying to fill a hole in my life that only you could fill." Amelia's breath caught. "Jameson, let me finish," he said gently. "Yes, I'm hurt. Yes, I'm angry about the time we lost. But sitting here now, knowing the truth about everything you were dealing with, I understand why you made the choices you did. I wasn't ready to be a father then, or the kind of man you deserved." Fresh tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks. "I never stopped loving you," she confessed. "Even when I was convinced I'd made the right choice, even when I told myself to move on, you were always there in my heart. Every time I look at Ella, I see you in her smile, in her determination, in the way she furrows her brow when she's thinking hard about something." Jameson felt his own eyes grow damp. "She's incredible," he said. "You've done an amazing job raising her, protecting her. But now it's time to let me help. Not just with Luke or legal issues, but with everything. I want to be a real father to her, and—" He paused, gathering his courage. "If you'll let me, I want another chance with you too." Amelia looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. "I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago," she warned. "Neither am I," Jameson replied. "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we needed to grow up separately before we could grow together." A watery laugh escaped her. "When did you get so wise?" Probably around the time a little girl ran into my life and called me Daddy," he said softly. "Everything changed in that moment, Amelia. Everything finally made sense." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower in the sky. The mother duck had led her babies to shore, where they now huddled together in the growing dusk. Jameson felt Amelia's head come to rest on his shoulder, a familiar gesture that sparked memories of countless evenings spent just like this before life had torn them apart. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." Jameson pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I'm sorry too, but we can't change the past. All we can do is try to build something better for the future, for Ella and for us." Amelia lifted her head to look at him, and in her eyes he saw the same love that had captured his heart all those years ago. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like that very much. It won't be easy," Jameson said, his voice gentle but serious. "There's a lot of ground to cover, a lot of trust to rebuild." Amelia nodded, wrapping her arms around herself as the evening air grew cooler. "I know. But seeing you with Ella these past few weeks, the way you protect her, how naturally you've stepped into being her father, it makes me believe we can do this." Jameson stood up from the garden bench and offered Amelia his hand. She took it, allowing him to help her up, and they began walking along the winding path through his estate's gardens. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. "Do you remember," Jameson began, "that first night when Ella ran to me? I had no idea who she was, but something in my heart just knew. There was this immediate connection, this overwhelming need to protect her." Amelia's eyes softened at the memory. "She told me later that she felt safe with you right away. That's not like her at all. She's usually so shy with strangers." "She's remarkable," Jameson said, his voice filled with pride. "Smart, brave, compassionate. Every day I spend with her, I discover something new that amazes me. Yesterday, she showed me this detailed drawing she made of the entire solar system, complete with facts about each planet." "She loves astronomy," Amelia said, smiling. "She checked out every space book in her school library last month." They paused near a flowering cherry tree, its delicate petals drifting down around them in the gentle breeze. Jameson turned to face Amelia, his expression earnest. "I want to be there for everything," he said. "The science projects, the scraped knees, the nightmares, the victories. I want to help her with homework and teach her to ride a bike. I want to be the father she deserves." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. "You already are, Jameson. The way you handled everything with Luke, how you've put her safety above everything else, that's what a real father does." "But I've missed so much," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Her first words, her first steps. I wasn't there when she started school or lost her first tooth. I can never get those moments back." Amelia reached up and touched his cheek gently. "No, we can't change the past. But think of all the firsts still ahead. Her first dance recital, her first science fair, her first day of middle school. You'll be there for all of those." Jameson covered her hand with his own, leaning slightly into her touch. "I want to be there for your firsts too, Amelia. I want us to have a chance to build something real together, something lasting." "What about your business?" she asked hesitantly. "Your lifestyle. Everything's so different now." "None of that matters without family," he said firmly. "These past 8 years, I've been successful by every measure except the ones that truly count. I had everything money could buy, but I was empty inside. Now, for the first time since losing you, I feel whole again." They continued walking, their hands naturally finding each other. The garden lights began to flicker on around them, creating a magical atmosphere in the growing dusk. "I'm scared," Emilia admitted quietly. "Not of Luke anymore, but of letting myself hope again, of believing we can really have this second chance." "I'm scared too," Jameson confessed. "Terrified, actually. But I'm more afraid of losing you both again than I am of trying and failing. We're different people now, Emilia. Stronger, wiser. Maybe we needed this time apart to become the people who could make this work." A small smile tugged at Emilia's lips. "When did you become so insightful?" "Probably around the same time I realized what really matters in life," he replied. "Money, power, success. They're meaningless if you don't have anyone to share them with. Ella and you're my real legacy. Everything else is just details." They reached the garden pavilion, where soft lights illuminated the intimate space. Inside, they could see Ella through the window, sitting at the kitchen table with her homework spread out before her, her tongue stuck out in concentration as she worked on a math problem. "Look at her," Jameson said softly. "She's perfect, and she's ours, Emilia. We made something incredible together, even if we didn't know it for all these years. I want to make up for lost time, but more than that, I want to create new memories, as a family." Emilia turned to face him fully, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'd like that too, and I think maybe we can help each other heal from the past while we build this future together." Jameson pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a gentle embrace. "We've both made mistakes," he murmured into her hair. "We've both carried guilt and regret, but maybe it's time to let all that go and focus on what matters now. Our daughter, our love, our future." Through the window, they watched as Ella looked up from her homework, caught sight of them, and broke into a radiant smile. She waved enthusiastically, and they both waved back, their hearts full of love for this precious girl who had brought them back together. "She deserves everything," Emilia said softly. "A happy home, 2 parents who love her, stability. And she'll have it all," Jameson promised. "We'll give her the family she deserves, the childhood she should have. Together." As they stood there in the growing darkness, holding each other close, while their daughter beamed at them through the window, both Jameson and Emilia felt something shift and settle in their hearts. The past couldn't be changed, but the future stretched out before them, full of possibility and hope. They had found their way back to each other through their love for Ella, and now they had the chance to build something even stronger than before, a family bound together by love, trust, and the promise of tomorrow. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway as Jameson's SUV pulled up to their new home. It was a beautiful 2-story house with a wraparound porch nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood, worlds away from both his mansion and the cramped apartment where Emilia and Ella had been living. "Is this really our house?" Ella pressed her nose against the car window, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's so pretty." Emilia smiled, catching Jameson's eye in the rearview mirror. "Yes, sweetheart. This is our new home." They had chosen this house together, spending weeks looking for the perfect place that would make them all feel safe and comfortable. It wasn't as grand as Jameson's estate, but that was precisely the point. They wanted something that felt like a real home, not a fortress. As they walked up the stone path to the front door, Ella ran ahead, her backpack bouncing with each step. "Can I pick my room first?" "We already picked your room, remember?" Emilia laughed, the one with the bay window overlooking the backyard. Jameson unlocked the door, and Ella darted inside. The sound of her footsteps thundered up the stairs as she raced to explore her new space. The moving company had delivered and arranged their furniture the day before, making the transition smoother. "I still can't believe this is real," Amelia said softly, standing in the entryway. The house smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Jameson wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. It's real. We're home. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a routine. Jameson adjusted his work schedule to be home for dinner most nights, often helping Ella with her homework afterward. He discovered that third-grade math had changed quite a bit since his school days, but he loved every minute of learning alongside his daughter. One evening, as he sat at the kitchen table helping Ella with her multiplication tables, Amelia watched them from the doorway. Her heart swelled at the sight of their heads bent together, Jameson's patience evident as he explained the concepts using colored markers and simple drawings. 7 times 8 equals 56, Ella exclaimed triumphantly. That's my girl! Jameson high-fived her, his face beaming with pride. These were the moments he had missed, the small victories, the daily achievements that made up childhood. The weekend brought another first as they worked together to plant a small garden in the backyard. Ella, wearing tiny pink gardening gloves, carefully placed tomato seedlings in the soil, while Jameson built a trellis for the climbing beans. "Daddy, look!" Ella called out, holding up an earthworm. "Can we keep him?" Jameson chuckled, still amazed at how naturally she had started calling him Daddy. "I think he needs to stay in the garden, sweetheart. He helps make the soil healthy for our plants." Amelia joined them, carrying glasses of lemonade on a tray. The simple domesticity of the moment nearly brought tears to her eyes. This was everything she had ever wanted for Ella, and for herself. The transition wasn't always smooth. There were moments of uncertainty, old fears that crept in during quiet moments. Sometimes Amelia would wake in the middle of the night, her heart racing, before remembering that Luke was in prison and couldn't hurt them anymore. But Jameson was there, steady and patient. When she had nightmares, he would hold her close, his presence a reminder that they were safe. When Ella had questions about why they hadn't always been together as a family, they answered honestly but age-appropriately, helping her understand that sometimes grown-ups made mistakes, but love could heal old wounds. They created new traditions together. Sunday morning pancake breakfasts became sacred family time. Movie nights found them all cuddled on the couch, Ella sandwiched between her parents as they watched animated films. Jameson discovered he had a surprising fondness for princess movies, though he pretended to grumble about them. The house slowly transformed from a building into a home. Ella's artwork appeared on the refrigerator. Family photos, new ones taken together, filled the frames on the walls. Even Jameson's home office, once a symbol of his workaholic tendencies, now featured a special corner where Ella could color while he worked. Each day brought new discoveries, new joys, and yes, new challenges. But they faced them together, growing stronger as a family with each passing moment. The security system Jameson had installed gave them peace of mind, but it was their love for each other that truly made them feel safe. They were building something precious, not just a home, but a future. A future where Ella would grow up surrounded by love, where old wounds could heal, and where second chances weren't just dreams, but reality. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Amelia and Jameson sat in Dr. Karen Mitchell's office, the soft patter of raindrops against the windows creating a soothing backdrop. The therapist's warm smile put them at ease as they began their third session together. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, Dr. Mitchell reminded them gently. It's like building a house. You need a strong foundation first. Amelia nodded, her hand finding Jameson's. I keep expecting things to fall apart, she admitted. Even though I know Luke is in prison, there's this part of me that's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Jameson squeezed her hand. I understand that fear, he said softly. But I'm not going anywhere, not this time. Their weekly therapy sessions became anchors, helping them navigate the complexities of their renewed relationship. They learned to communicate better, to express their fears without judgment, and to understand each other's perspectives. At home, Jameson discovered the joys of fatherhood in countless small moments. He taught Ella how to ride her bike without training wheels, running alongside her until she found her balance. When she fell, he was there to dust her off and encourage her to try again. The pride in her eyes when she finally rode on her own made his heart soar. During their daddy-daughter dates, they explored the local ice cream shop, trying every flavor until they found their favorites. Ella always chose strawberry, while Jameson developed a surprising fondness for mint chocolate chip. These simple outings became treasured traditions. One evening, as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Amelia observed the change in Jameson. The once guarded businessman had softened, his smile coming more easily, his laughter more frequent. He caught her watching and pulled her close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For giving me this chance, for letting me be a father to our daughter, for trusting me again." Amelia leaned into his embrace, their fingers intertwined. The future stretched before them, not perfect but full of possibility. They had learned that love wasn't about avoiding mistakes, but about choosing to face them together, growing stronger with each challenge overcome. Their new home buzzed with the warmth of family life. In the spacious kitchen, the aroma of fresh-baked cookies filled the air as Ella stood on her step stool, helping Amelia mix chocolate chip cookie dough. Jameson watched from the doorway, his heart full at the sight of his two favorite people covered in flour and giggling together. "Daddy, you have to try one!" Ella called out, holding up a warm cookie. Her face beamed with pride as Jameson took an exaggerated bite and declared it the best cookie he'd ever tasted. Family dinners became sacred time. They gathered around the oak table each evening, sharing stories about their day. Ella would excitedly tell them about her adventures at school, while Jameson and Amelia listened intently, cherishing these precious moments they'd missed for so long. "Can we play Monopoly tonight?" Ella asked one evening after dinner. Board game nights had become their favorite tradition. Jameson pretended to think it over, though they all knew he'd never say no to his daughter's request. "Only if your mom promises not to buy all the railroads this time," he teased, winking at Amelia. "I make no such promises." Amelia laughed, clearing the dishes. Later, as they sat around the coffee table, the board game sparked stories of their own childhoods. Amelia shared memories of playing games with her grandmother, while Jameson recalled lonely nights wishing for exactly what they had now, a family to share these simple pleasures with. The living room became their sanctuary. Some evenings they would build pillow forts and read stories together. Other nights they'd watch movies. Ella snuggled between them on the couch. The simple act of being together brought a peace none of them had known before. Bedtime became a cherished ritual. Both parents would tuck Ella in, taking turns reading chapters from her favorite books. Sometimes they'd make up stories together, each adding silly twists that made Ella laugh until her sides hurt. "I love you both," Ella would say each night, her eyes heavy with sleep. "We love you too, sweetheart." They'd respond in unison, sharing a smile over their daughter's head. In these quiet moments, Jameson and Amelia found their own healing. Their love had deepened, transformed by shared parenthood and the joy of creating the family they'd both always wanted. Their past hurts faded in the light of their present happiness, replaced by the steady comfort of belonging together. The golden evening sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink as Jameson, Amelia, and Ella sat together on their wraparound porch. The wooden swing creaked gently as Ella nestled between her parents, her head resting against Amelia's shoulder. "Look at those colors," Amelia whispered, pointing to where the sun touched the horizon. "Isn't it beautiful?" Jameson's arm stretched across the back of the swing, his fingers absently playing with a strand of Amelia's hair. He watched his daughter's face light up with wonder at the sunset, still amazed at how much joy such simple moments could bring. "It reminds me of sherbet ice cream," Ella declared, making both her parents laugh. As the sky deepened into darker hues, Jameson felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. Just months ago, he'd been alone in his massive estate, haunted by memories and regrets. Now, here he sat with the family he never thought he'd have, whole and healing. "Remember when we first moved in?" Amelia asked softly, her eyes meeting Jameson's. "Everything felt so uncertain then." He nodded, thinking back to those first tentative days. They'd all been walking on eggshells, trying to find their footing in this new life together. But day by day, moment by moment, they'd built something beautiful from the broken pieces of their past. "I'm glad we're home," Ella said simply, reaching for both their hands. Jameson squeezed her small fingers, marveling at how naturally the word home now fell from her lips. This house had become more than just a safe haven. It was the foundation of their renewed family, a place where love had flourished despite all odds. The last rays of sunlight caught the silver charm bracelet on Amelia's wrist, a gift from Jameson to celebrate their fresh start. Each charm represented a milestone in their journey, a key for their new home, a heart for their rekindled love, a butterfly for transformation. As darkness settled around them, the porch lights clicked on automatically, casting a warm glow over their little family. Stars began appearing in the twilight sky, and a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of the garden Amelia and Ella had planted together. "This is perfect," Amelia murmured, leaning her head against Jameson's shoulder. He couldn't help but agree. Their path to this moment hadn't been easy, but every struggle had been worth it. Love had given them the courage to face their past, forgiveness had opened the door to healing, and patience had allowed them to rebuild trust day by day. Together, they watched the last traces of daylight fade from the sky, their hearts full with the promise of tomorrow and all the days to follow. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.